Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Hi, ladies.
Hi.
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 How's everyone? I'm super excited. I'm like bouncing off the walls, even though it's kind of really early where I am on the West Coast. But I'm really excited to bring this topic to the world. And this is very, very timely and very important topic. So before we dive into the material, I just want to go around the room and we'll give a brief introduction. If you can just tell your name, your role, and the company that you work for, and then we'll get right into it. So Lydia, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to be here. I'm Lydia, the VP of Operations at Storyblok, and I joined Storyblok 2 years ago. And I'm happy to tell you about my story in tech.
Petra?
Yeah, hi, and thanks for having me here. I'm really humbled. I currently work in the VC, and I joined from the tech. So right now I'm in the darker side, as they say. And yeah, happy to share more details. It was a bumpy one.
Okay. Fabiana.
Hi, Leah. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here. So I'm co-founder and chief data officer at YData. So we are building this product and data development platform for data scientists. And happy to tell more about my story and currently based in Seattle.
Jen?
Hi, everyone. First of all, happy Women's Month. So we still have one more day. So my name's Jen Looper. I'm a principal education cloud advocate on the next generation team at Microsoft. So we're all about the next generation, the students and the faculty who are teaching them. And I'm really excited to be here and to talk about, 22 years in the industry and what's next for everybody.
Amazing. Vanessa?
Hi, thank you also for having me. I'm Vanessa. I'm the front-end lead at Savvy.io. I'm also hosting some podcasts, for example, the German-speaking podcast Working Draft. I'm based in Germany.
Great, awesome. And again, my name is Leah. I'm account executive with Storyblok. I'm new to tech. I started about 7 months ago, and it feels like a long time. I don't know if that resonates with you ladies, but it feels like a really long time. But I'm really, really happy to be here and surrounded by so many brilliant minds, brilliant women every single day. It's like what I live for. So, okay, let's kick it off and just let's find out, like, how did you enter tech? How did you start? Like, what was your start? Like, what was your defining moment? I think let's ask Fabiana to kick it off with.
Of course, my pleasure. So I guess it was all about university. So I took my background is applied maths, and during my bachelor's, we also had like contact with programming. And I guess I just fell in love. It was an obvious path to follow. So I started with Java, then had the pleasure to explore databases and SQL. And later on, I just started working on R and Python to deliver data science solutions. So definitely, it was a very straightforward path for me since I had so soon contact with technology. Now, I did love and I still love to take deep dives into the tech world. I'm really passionate about what I do. And it's all about the experience. So the technology world has so many opportunities. And I'm glad I was exposed so early to that.
That's awesome. So you took a rather traditional path. That's really amazing.
Exactly.
Anybody take a roundabout, non-traditional path to tech? Jen, can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, how did you start? How did you get interested?
Sure. Yeah, it's really the opposite, actually. I'm terrible at math, actually. So, no, my dream when I was 16 and went to France as an exchange student was to be a French teacher. So I went all the way, man. I just like head down, got the PhD in French, and decided I'm going to get that university job.
Wow.
Turns out that becoming, specializing in medieval French literature is not a growth industry. Who knew? So it was lucky though, because it was right at the year 2000 when it was the .com boom kind of tailing off. And I got a bit lucky. I just started from scratch, retrained myself with books and Macromedia University, and then got a job in a startup as I think I was a web designer back in the webmaster back in those days, and just kind of clawed my way up through different companies. So 22 years later, it's going okay.
That's amazing. So for those of you that actually started out knowing that you wanted to be in tech, how was, like Jen, you said that you were horrible in math, like I was the same. How much of that do you think was actually you being bad at it, or the environment around you that was not encouraging to females, to women?
Keep in mind that I was born in 1970. So, growing up in the 70s and 80s, girls just didn't do math. Remember the Barbie that said math is hard? Like that was in the 80s. Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah. So you ladies are like, but yeah, it was weird back in the day. And I have 3 older brothers. So I was not really encouraged, and I was freaked out by math my whole life. And then now here at Microsoft, I'm doing courseware on machine learning. So it's absolutely scandalous, like what people, the attitudes that are infused in young girls. And we're gonna get rid of that culture ASAP. That's unacceptable.
Awesome, right? Because this is breaking the bias, right? So let's talk a little bit more about that. So I'm curious, with Vanessa and Petra and Lydia, have you guys experienced, like when you were growing up or when you were studying in university, how was the atmosphere? Was it conducive to you cultivating a career, your education in tech? How did that feel to you? I'm really curious about that bit.
Then I would just start.
Vanessa, you can start off.
In my childhood, it was different. So nobody told me that I was doing boyish things, like that I like math and that I like computers was somehow okay. And just nobody told me that this was wrong or so. It was much, much, much later, somehow in university, but unfortunately it was also kind of getting normal. So I don't even saw these occurrences where other people told me, hey, can you do the icons or can you do the design and stuff? So that was normal. That's as Chen said, unacceptable, that it was already normal for me to hear. But it even came much later when I started to also talk about some front-end technologies, that then people told me weird things like, hey, you are actually doing a good job for a woman, and wow, and that, so it's really vice versa for me here.
Wow. So sorry, somebody actually said, oh, you're doing a great job as a woman?
Especially for a woman.
Wow. Holy smokes. How did that feel at the time? Did you realize what they were saying, or did it just
I did realize at that second, and the problem is that I couldn't react. It's always so easy to say how you should have reacted afterwards or what you should have said, but it's like someone just kicks you in the face and you don't even know what to say. And also, I was raised, and it's just normal also to be very friendly. So I immediately tried to look for excuses for that sentence. The person said, like, no, it was meant differently, and then I was, what are you doing? There is no excuse for that sentence.
That makes sense. Okay. Petra, what about you?
Well, so for me, I think it was mainly in the grammar school. So basically, I was studying to be an architect, and it was my dream job. And so I took like extra math, physics, and descriptive geometry, and it was this kind of environment where I just was the only girl taking those extra courses with like guys, and so it was perceived as weird. It was kind of like environment where even from the teachers, and it was the kind of like atmosphere around that they would tell you, like girls usually don't pick up those courses, so it was kind of discouraging. But yeah.
Lydia, what about you?
Yeah, I think I have a very opposite situation compared, for example, to Jen. So when I grew up with a brother and a lot of cousins, and my father, my grandfather, they always treated me equal to the man part of my family. And I always had to do the same. So I never thought it's strange to do the same thing. And then I just followed my dream, and I had a very great role model, like my mom. She also followed her dream always and was an entrepreneur when she had 2 young kids. And so I saw, okay, you can be whatever you want if you just work hard and do it. And then I studied. I have a finance and a business administration background, and I started in the bank industry, tax industry, accounting industry, and I didn't like it that much, and I was complaining to my brother who worked in the tech industry. And at that time, he encouraged me and told me, "Hey, if you're looking for a more modern, for nicer environment, maybe you should try out tech. Maybe that's a industry where you would feel more comfortable." And then thought, okay, yeah, he could be right. So I haven't tried that industry, so let's go into it. And then, yeah, for the last 5 years, I have been working in tech companies. And I have to say, compared to banks, insurance companies, industrial work, construction work, it has been quite a change.
That's amazing. That's great. That's awesome to have role models growing up. Like I know I definitely didn't have that. All of my family was blue collar. And so I never even knew something like that was open to me. And like Jen, like I'm a 1970s baby. So it was, the women, we had traditional roles, and I hated math. I barely escaped a couple of math classes. um, right. So I can definitely relate. So Fabian, I'm curious, you knew you wanted to be in tech from young. How was the environment when you were growing up, going through school, university, etc.? Did it feel male dominated, or how did it feel to you? I'm just really curious about that.
Yeah, I guess when I was younger, I definitely studied art. So only later on, I decided to go to science world. It was mainly because of my father. So my father was always passionate about mathematics. My sister decided to take another path through being a doctor, so medicine. And it was like, oh, I really like maths. I'm so sad that nobody from my children does share my passion. And that was when architecture was also a thing I wanted to follow. But then I did realize I was more into tech and more into science rather than really the artistic side. So the artistic side was something I would pursue as a hobby, but I was not passionate enough to follow it as a profession. So I just did the 360 degrees change and did the maths instead. It was my decision. My role model was definitely my parent. My father was a great role model always. Always my biggest supporter, of course. When you are taking maths, one thing I've noticed is everyone will look at you and think you are going to be a maths teacher. If
Wow.
that might
Wait a minute.
fall into the
Hold on.
yes,
how does that happen? Really?
yes. At least here
That's
in
very
Portugal, where I
interesting.
took my degree, yes, everyone asks you like, so you are studying to be a math teacher, and I'm like, no,
Wow.
I'm studying to become someone in the tech space. And it was like, yeah. They look at you like, I don't believe that much. But the course itself, it was 50-50. So we had a nice representativity between women and men. And definitely it was always a nice environment. I never felt like put it aside during university or anything that I felt different rather than just that comment of, are you going to be a teacher? It was
That's
more when I
interesting.
joined the professional side that I did felt the difference, because I was probably just one of the few that decided to follow tech from my degree. Everything else decided to go to insurance or to credit risk space, which is normal for someone that takes applied maths. And when I joined the tech world as a profession, it was when I felt the male dominance, as if I can say so. Definitely, it's. I guess sometimes it can get a bit lonely in the sense that you don't recognize yourself in your peers. They have a different way to behave. They have a different way to thought. They have a different way to relate between working colleagues. And I guess that was, for me, the first shock when I started to work. Happily, I did have a good environment. The environment was always nice, but as I guess any other speakers here will tell, you always have to prove yourself more than if you are a male. So you have always to run further, to do more, and to prove that you are equally good, even if tech, tech, it does not depend on your gender or your physical abilities or whatsoever. Anyone can be good at tech, but for some reason, if you are a female, as Vanessa mentioned, you are doing a good job, even for a female.
Wow,
that's the what you feel. Yeah,
that's super mind blowing to me. Wow, I don't think no one's ever said that to me. I haven't heard that yet.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to mention.
No, go ahead, Jen.
There's history behind this, because the first coders were women, all the ladies in Bletchley Park doing all the code cracking in World War II. And then it all switched to become a male dominated field, and then salaries went up. So there's some serious, interestingly weird history of the gender flip in tech.
That's very interesting that you say that, because there was a film out recently, or not a couple of years ago, called Hidden Figures. I don't know if you guys saw that, but it was about women who were the main mathematicians that were doing all these manual calculations to send people to space. Did anybody see that movie?
Yeah.
It was amazing. I never knew
Very
such a thing
inspiring.
existed. Right? Oh my gosh. So okay, so that's a great segue into career life, because in university, in school, it can be quite insulated, right? Because you're with your peers, you are, hang out with people that are also going through university. It probably isn't as competitive, and I use that term a little loosely, environment. So when you when you went into the working world, what was that like? If you went right into tech industry, by a show of hands, who did that right into tech from university? Did any of you? Okay. So Vanessa, what was that like from university to actually the working world and working in tech? What that feel like?
So I started very, very early with HTML and CSS to learn it. So I think I had the advantage that I was really confident there. And every time someone wanted to correct me already in university, they showed me how to do it differently. And I looked at it and I was like, no, my way is better. So there really I had the advantage that I wasn't like getting out again because of the fear, but I was confident there and I knew this. And then I was first starting at a startup, and everything was very family like there. So that was still good. It was later on. So I can just confirm everything what Fabiana said, that you have to prove more, constantly have to prove more. And I actually also had from friends, they taught me, or not really taught me, but they told me what I should ask for a salary and what I should do there. And I was like, no, that's too much, right? That's too much. It doesn't feel weird. They will never give me that. But it took years to understand that I was paid less, and years to somehow get out of it. And it makes me a bit angry how many years it took.
What about you, Fabiana? How did that transition feel? Was it natural? Did it feel weird?
It was natural. Definitely, I did feel these small bits of differences. But one thing that it was good is when at the company where I was when we started, everyone had the same salary range. It did only depend on whether you had the bachelor or a master degree, which is nice. I do feel like, and I was glad that my environment. I had a manager, so the person that was mentoring me was a woman as well. So I was lucky in that sense, and I always got strong women leading the teams while I was working. So I always had these very good role models, and that helped a lot. So to shape my career. But one thing I did feel like Vanessa is throughout the years, when you start looking at the jobs, other opportunities, when you start negotiating your salary, is definitely when you feel though your education or what is told to boys and girls, which is you always have to settle for less or you shouldn't risk that much. And you feel that in yourself when you are even negotiating your own salary. You go there and you are humble asking because you are afraid. And if you see, guys usually make it until fake it until you make it a lot. So they have that inherited in them, which is good when you are a person that wants to aim for more. In our cases, it was very hard at the beginning for me to release of that mentality. Of course, nowadays it's totally different, but it was a learning curve, and that was what I felt more, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah, it makes complete sense. So who switched mid-career to tech, mid-career or earlier career? So, for Petra, how did that feel to you when you were going from what your first career was and then you were entering the tech field? What were some of the differences? How did it feel? How did the environment feel? Was it different?
Yeah. So basically, I studied architecture. I made it to the architecture. I thought it's my dream, but then you kind of face the expectations and reality. And I had a exchange here in Shanghai, and that's where I actually discovered the world of tech. I met a lot of startups, and there was really exciting tech scene, a lot of like Asian Silicon Valley, and that's where I actually started to work as a freelancer, kind of trying to switch from architecture to tech. Working for free because I didn't know how to price myself, and like working as a UX designer, product designer, and yeah, and then eventually just working my way up through a lot of projects that I did on the top of like other jobs in order to build my portfolio and then prove that I can actually make it to the tech. It was like a lot of hard work, but ultimately working for a lot of like there's a lot of like community projects and amazing community works that you always kind of have the chance to work with someone or like do a lot of like amazing things that you can build yourself up. And then eventually like moving back to Europe, I always felt this like imposter syndrome because when you don't have the degree, when you don't have the right background, you was always challenged like first you're a woman and then the second thing is like you don't have the right degree, right? And so like you just have to work yourself up. And so then I think like what really helped me is like I found a friend that actually made it through that hassle some time ago, and then she really was there to support me, and really kind of encouraged me, through all the bumps, and she was the one who provided me with some projects, and we were freelancing together, and then we were hired into software development agency, and yeah, it's always you kind of like have to balance and then work extra hard to prove like you're worthy, and then you can do well. Yeah.
Right. So, and Jen, how did that feel to you? How did the career transition at the time? Because it was the earlier days, right? So how did the times, did that impact how you felt about it, or the impact that your environment? How was that for you?
Yeah, it's like 300 years ago, so it's hard to remember. The lady on the Titanic, it's been 83 years.
Right.
But it was a lucky moment, honestly. And I'm in Boston. Boston is a different tech scene. It's more academically focused. It's more international and diverse, and it's a lot more supportive. I think it's very different from Silicon Valley. It's a lot less, bro culture. So Boston is a really cool place to build a career like that. But I always said that in 2000, if like a monkey could get a job if they could type HTMLs, and like that's my level. I was like, yeah, let's make some tabs, It's just, it was a bit lucky to get that first startup gig. I have no idea about salary. I never asked, what other people are making. I was so grateful to have a job and to get actual pay for this fun activity, right? So, and then everything kind of collapsed. You get laid off of the startups, because funding runs out. And then I went to nonprofit for a while, worked there, and then got to a bigger corporation, which was an insurance shop, Sun Life Financial. And that was a really great experience because there are lots of women there who are very, very technical. That's where I found my mentor. So it's like from there, once you can kind of insert yourself into a proper tech scene, then you're in great shape. Yeah.
And Lydia, what about you? How was the transition? But you said you always worked in tech companies, or am I incorrect in that?
Not always. So, as I said, I started in the bank industry and I worked in the construction industry, but I didn't like that too much. I think the stories are very inspiring of all the other women as well here. And I think I also had one moment that was really mind blowing to me, or that changed my mind a lot. So I worked at a private equity company and I was still very young. So I think I was 27 years old and I always looked a little bit younger. And one day I was a CEO of one of the startups there already. So I went with the bank man for investment into the room and he sat down and I started talking to him and he said something, yeah, you could make me a coffee one. And I was like, yeah, I'm not the assistant. So I'm the CEO of that company together
He said
with
what?
my yeah.
I'm sorry, he said what?
He said that if he could have a coffee because he thought I'm the assistant. And
Wow.
then my boss at that time also joined the meeting. And he was a really, really good mentor and he supported me a lot. But then at this situation afterwards, I thought about it. Should I maybe dress a little bit different to look older? Should I act differently? However, then at the end, I decided for myself, also after this discussion with my boss and the shareholders of that company, they also said, hey, don't change who you are. Then I thought, okay, I don't change who I am. I want to change the work surrounding or the work environment. And at that time, that wasn't the company that was not good. So it was the person from outside. But that's how I started to work then. I really took more care about the company where I work. Do they have the values? Do the leadership people, does the manager have the good or the values that I would like to see? And I think that's what we're also trying to do at Storyblok, to give everyone the feeling, be who you are, you can be who you want. And it doesn't matter how you look, if you're old, if you're young, it's about your expertise and what you bring in the company. And I think that's very important.
Yeah, that makes sense. So just as we're having a conversation, like the two elephants in the room kind of reared their heads a little bit. So let's go to how, like, being yourself, right? And what we perceive the expectations are versus what we feel is right within ourselves. So did you have any preconceived ideas, or like when you ladies started working in tech, when you actually enter your careers or when you changed careers to the tech field, how did your personality play into what you do now? How did it, or the expectations of it? Did that impact how you felt about the industry or how you maneuvered within the industry? I'm really curious to hear the answer to this. Petra, you can start.
Well, I think it just worked very well to be always vulnerable and but it really have the support around like from the peers, the closest peers that that kind of help you and I think I was always super lucky that I had actually great leaders, like great managers that actually really empowered me, and I always felt like I can be true myself. um, and surprisingly there's actually all of them were men, and I always felt like super I mean challenged in a good way, like that I had like a great projects to work on and just really and I could always like say like what I really think and then what I it was just super authentic environment and so I think like that was, if I can be authentic myself in the work, I can do the best work and so yeah. I don't know if I answered what you asked, but I think it's like coming to be true to yourself, like to really you can be passionate about the cause and when you have the great collective around you, that's what worked the best for me, and people that believe in me and in that they felt that together we're achieving something that it felt very complimentary. So that's something that it's great to have.
Awesome. So they're telling me I need to wrap, but I do want to tackle this one question really quickly. Pay gap, pay disparity, because like when we were talking, we were having this conversation. I think all of us, at least, we said, okay, we didn't know what the salaries were. We didn't know what to ask for. Is it salary transparency? Is it lacking? Is the gender pay gap? Is it alive and well, or is it dying? I'm just curious. We can go around the room really quickly. I'll start with Fabiana.
I guess the pay gap is still here, to be honest, and I don't think it will be sorted on its own, especially in the technology area. And now I'm a founder, and I of course I'm also seeing what happens between men and women, especially. But if you go and check, it's normal that men ask higher salaries, and that in the end makes the gap still existing. So it's about changing the mentalities that ladies, you can go aim for higher. If you deserve it, you should ask about it. And I think
Right.
that's what we need to take into consideration to also eliminate the gap, especially in the tech area. I do see a lot of gaps, to be honest.
Okay, awesome. Petra, what's your view?
So I mean, I have this experience from the tech and now in the VC, which is also kind of interesting comparison for me, because so in the tech, I felt that if you have really good managers, good leaders, it was always like super transparent conversation, and I've never perceived that I was kind of undervalued, and it just felt very transparent but I do agree with Fabiana that men maybe have like a different negotiation power initially, kind of entering that, so it changes the dynamics. And then my experience from the VC, which I actually really loved, and maybe it's just one of the few examples, but I thought like, oh damn, I will have to negotiate, and I had to do a lot of research, also coming from the tech, not actually being from the VC vertical, and it was all transparent. So like, this is your role, and this is what you're being interviewed for, and we have this like very transparent table. So this is what every role takes, and for me that was like so amazing, because I didn't have to really think like how to play it well so that it plays well for me, and I know it's either kind of like take it or leave it, and I know that it sets such a great atmosphere for the whole team, because there's no kind of room for think, oh, maybe this person earns, I don't know, 1.5 more than I do. So I really like that, actually. Yeah.
Awesome. Vanessa, and then we have a question from one of the audience members, but I'll let Vanessa answer that question. The pay
The
gap.
question, what the pay? Okay, the pay gap. Yes, in general, it's still there. That doesn't mean that there are not women who earn the same salaries as men, but there seems to be a lot fewer of them. So if I just think of me, I am very, very, very good at what I'm doing in tech. And then on top, I was in the community. On top, I write articles. On top, I do this and this and that. And yes, I now do have this position where I'm paid pretty well and I'm this privileged woman. But I have the feeling I had to do all of those things. And from all of Munich, I just hear, okay, someone in a different company asked for the same salary as you, and they are, intermediate front end. It's just weird. So there are definitely women who get good salary, but I see 1 of 10 people in leadership positions are women, and I think it's the same for the salary.
Okay, makes sense. Jen, what about you?
Yeah, I would say two things. Knowledge is power, and there are communities out there that share spreadsheets, and those spreadsheets have location, level, and salary, and it's anonymous. So it's very, very interesting to look at some of the levels. There's also levels.fyi, but for big tech, it really is going to depend on your negotiation skills. And I have learned recently that folks are hiring professional negotiators, professional salary negotiators. Folks are on LinkedIn. Yeah, it's extremely interesting, very interesting. Yeah, so it's almost becoming a business in and of itself. But honestly, I think I would recommend, if you're like a Midwestern mom like me and just like happy to work in tech, like get a professional negotiator and just do it.
Yeah. And Lydia, and then we'll take a question and wrap it.
Yeah, so we'll quickly answer because I have not so much to add to my colleagues or to the other comments. I think at the beginning, maybe the payment gap is maybe not so big. And I have the feeling that it's becoming bigger, especially when there is a break for women when they have a kid or when they stay at home, families. And then the gap is even becoming bigger and bigger. So I hope that we can close that gap. And I think, spreadsheets would be a good start to build the knowledge there.
I had no such a thing existed.
Yeah, I think Adelina, so support each other. Let's build a community where we can close this gap together as well.
Okay, so let's wrap up. We have one question from an audience member. Where are you excited to see the next 5 years in the tech world? What do you think's coming? Anyone can answer that. What are you excited to see?
I wouldn't say excited, but I'm curious to see where Web3 is going. As a solid Web2 person, I'm curious where we're taking the decentralization concept and how it's going to impact things like sustainability. So the tension is there.
Fabienne, as a founder, what are you excited to see, or what are you curious to see come?
I'm curious to see a big change in terms of female in leadership and female as founders of companies as well. That is an area where we don't see much. We are starting to see more, but definitely as a founder, I do feel that absence of females as founders. And I feel it in the gap, especially as a technical founder. So I guess that I would love to see the area with more inspiring women.
And the last question is for Petra and Vanessa. Someone is asking, let's see here. If you had to give one piece of advice to your younger self, what would it be? So I'll go to Vanessa first.
Yes. I will give this advice to every woman out there. So I already said that there were some men saying some stupid things, which I can just put in a box and forget about it. What really hurts, if another woman of you thinks that a man should do that job. And this got way too near to myself. And there were a couple of situations where a manager of mine was asked, "Hey, we need to send a representative. Who is it? Should we take Vanessa? Should we do a male?" And there were women saying the male one should go because maybe it's more trustworthy. And I don't know if I ever did so stupid things as well. Maybe I have said some things I thought so about myself. Probably I'm still thinking about myself that way. And so I give the advice, I don't want to say these empowering, but don't try to depower any person just because of gender, height, weight, whatever.
Yeah. And I'm gonna change the question that I'm asking to Petra, because someone just asked, a male viewer just asked a really great question. He said, do you have advice for male allies? How can we support you in the workplace? So I'm curious to hear your answer to that.
I guess be great leaders and great bosses and you know, really like empower people around you. And then if you can give them chance, then give it to them and believe in their best and nurture diversity, not even like gender. I think it's around like different backgrounds, different cultures, and because ultimately you're the one who's going to benefit from that. So I think that's just kind of super important because ultimately, and maybe going back to the other question before, I would encourage everyone who's really, you know, trying to maybe afraid to change, because you think like, you know, other people would look at you that, or like you don't have the right background, or you know, you don't have the right skills. Ultimately, all the changes, going through the struggle, that kind of empowers you, and you're kind of building different verticals next to each other. So it doesn't mean that, you know, maybe you don't have the right kind of variables. You have different variables, and that also counts, and it brings tremendous value to the table.
Awesome. Wow, I can't believe we're at the end of our time already. I feel like we could talk another 30 minutes to an hour. They're like tapping me on the shoulder. They're like poking me. It's time to wrap it up. So thank you, ladies, so much. This was an amazing, amazing panel discussion. And I think you all are on LinkedIn. So if anyone wants to reach out, anyone has other questions, but this was an amazing panel discussion. And I look forward to doing this again in the future, and the best of luck to all of you ladies as you forge your careers in tech and just advance and break the bias.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies, so
Thanks
much.
so much.
Bye.
Thank you.